3 orphan tiger cubs lay silent for days until a dog quietly walked up to them. From that moment, everything changed. But no one could have imagined 2 years later that same dog would be in mortal danger. And what one of the cubs did left the entire sanctuary speechless. At a wildlife rescue center deep in the heart of Texas, rangers discovered 3 tiger cubs abandoned near the forest edge on a cold November morning. Their mother had died after falling victim to poachers who had been terrorizing the region for months. The cubs, barely weaned and no more than 6 weeks old, were cold, weak, and nearly unresponsive when they were found huddled together beneath a fallen log. When brought back to the center, the situation looked grim. The cubs showed little will to survive. They refused to eat, avoided all contact with humans, and lay curled up in silence, their tiny bodies trembling. The veterinary team worked around the clock, monitoring vital signs that continued to weaken with each passing hour. They tried everything they could think of: heat lamps to regulate body temperature, hand feeding with specialized formula every 2 hours, medication to boost their immune systems. But something critical was missing: a heartbeat they could trust, a bond that felt real, something warm and alive to believe in. The cubs weren't just physically struggling, they were emotionally broken. They had lost their mother, their protector, their entire world, and without that connection, they were simply giving up. The staff held emergency meetings, consulting with animal behaviorists and wildlife experts across the country. Everyone agreed these cubs needed more than medicine, they needed love. That's when Dr. Sarah Chen, the head veterinarian, suggested something unconventional. She proposed bringing in Bella, a 5-year-old golden Labrador retriever who had lived at the sanctuary for years. Bella wasn't just any dog. She was known throughout the facility for her remarkable ability to comfort stressed and traumatized animals. She had a presence, a calmness that seemed to transcend species. Injured deer, orphaned raccoons, even a young black bear cub had all found solace in her company at different times. But behind Bella's gentle brown eyes was a hidden sorrow that everyone at the sanctuary knew about. Just 4 months earlier, Bella had lost her entire litter of 6 puppies to a sudden outbreak of parvovirus. Despite the staff's best efforts, none of them survived past their 3rd week. Bella had grown quieter ever since that tragedy. The playful energy she once had seemed dimmed. She was often seen lying by herself near the storage room, sometimes on the very blankets her puppies once slept on, staring into the distance as if remembering their tiny faces. The staff wondered if this might help Bella heal too. Perhaps in saving these cubs, she might save herself. Bella was led near the tiger enclosure on a quiet afternoon. The sanctuary had fallen still, as if nature itself was holding its breath. Bella didn't bark. She didn't show any signs of fear or excitement. She simply walked to the cage with measured steps, sat down with perfect composure, and watched the 3 cubs quietly through the bars, as if she somehow understood their pain and recognized it as her own. Minutes passed in complete silence. The cubs remained motionless in the far corner. But then it happened. Something shifted in the air. Simba, the smallest and weakest of the 3, the one the team feared might not make it through another night, slowly began to crawl toward the bars. His movements were shaky and uncertain, but determined. Bella didn't move toward him. She waited. She let him come to her on his own terms. When he finally reached the barrier, she quietly lowered herself to the ground, her body relaxed and open. The cub reached its small striped head through the bars and gently pressed against Bella's warm chest. For a moment, time seemed to stop. Everyone watching held their breath. Bella didn't move away or show any alarm at the wild animal touching her. Instead, she leaned in closer and began to lick his head with slow, deliberate strokes, the same way she had once groomed her own puppies.
It was the beginning of something no one at the sanctuary had ever witnessed before. From that day forward, Bella visited the cubs daily. The staff started with short, supervised sessions, carefully monitoring every interaction. But it quickly became clear that something extraordinary was unfolding. The cubs' vital signs began to improve. They started eating again. Their eyes grew brighter. Within a week, all three were gaining weight and showing signs of playfulness. Soon, after much deliberation and consultation with experts, Bella was allowed inside the enclosure itself. The decision was controversial. Some worried about the risks, both to Bella and to the cubs, but Dr. Chen insisted that the bond forming between them was too important to interrupt. She was right. All three cubs, Simba, Tao, and Juno, began following Bella everywhere, like true children following their mother. They mimicked her movements, learned from her behavior, and sought her approval in everything they did. Bella, in turn, seemed to come alive again. The light returned to her eyes. Her tail wagged once more. She had found her purpose. She taught them patience by making them wait calmly before meals. She taught them playfulness through gentle games of chase and tug-of-war with rope toys. She taught them calm by lying still during thunderstorms while they pressed against her sides. Most remarkably, she never showed fear of them, even as they grew larger and stronger each week. And in return, they never showed aggression toward her, not once. The mutual respect was absolute. The sanctuary team set up cameras to monitor them around the clock, both for safety and documentation. The footage they captured was nothing short of miraculous. Videos of Bella sleeping peacefully between three growing tigers, their massive paws draped over her body. Clips of her gently nudging them awake in the morning with her nose. Moments of her standing protectively between them and strangers who approached the enclosure, as any mother would. When the sanctuary began sharing these videos on social media, the response was overwhelming. Millions of people around the world viewed them. News outlets featured their story. Letters poured in from every continent. Children drew pictures of Bella and her cubs. But for Bella, it wasn't about attention or fame. It was about something deeper, something primal. It was motherhood, born from the ashes of grief and built on a foundation of unconditional love. Nearly 2 years passed in this way. The cubs grew strong, taller, heavier, and powerful. Simba reached 350 pounds. Tao grew to 380 pounds. Juno became the largest at 400 pounds. They were magnificent creatures, apex predators in their prime. But they were still, in every way that mattered, Bella's boys. They still waited for her at the enclosure entrance every morning, their massive heads lowering so she could greet them properly. They still lay beside her in the afternoon sun, their bodies forming a protective circle around her smaller frame. The bond had not weakened. If anything, it had grown stronger. Then came the morning that no one saw coming. The morning that would test the depth of their connection in ways no one could have imagined. Fresh tracks were discovered near the sanctuary's outer fence during the routine dawn patrol. The pattern was unmistakable. Snake tracks, large ones. The security cameras confirmed everyone's worst fears. A king cobra, nearly 12 feet long, had somehow slipped through a gap in the outer barrier during the night. King cobras are among the most dangerous snakes in the world, capable of delivering enough venom in a single bite to kill an elephant. The entire facility went into emergency protocol. While the staff responded to the alert, mobilizing the snake removal team and securing the animal enclosures, Bella was already outside in the rear garden area, resting as she did every morning in her favorite spot beneath the oak tree. She had earned the privilege of roaming certain secure areas freely. She loved the garden. She loved the peace. The cobra emerged from behind a bush less than 15 feet from where she lay. Its hood was expanded, Its head was raised. It was in defensive posture, likely feeling cornered and threatened by the unfamiliar environment. Bella saw it and stood up, but didn't bark or move aggressively. She simply froze, her instincts telling her that any sudden movement might trigger a strike.
But before the snake could make its decision, before staff could arrive, Tao appeared. The enclosure gate had been left momentarily open during the emergency protocols, something that would later be investigated and addressed. Tao, always the most alert and protective of the three brothers, had noticed Bella's absence and come looking for her. When he saw the cobra, his pupils narrowed, his ears flattened, and without hesitation, he sprinted forward with the full force of his 380-pound frame, placing himself directly between Bella and the threat. A confrontation unfolded that lasted less than 30 seconds, but felt like an eternity to everyone who witnessed it. Tao moved with incredible precision, using his paw to swipe at the cobra, while keeping his body as a shield in front of Bella. The snake struck twice. The first strike missed. The second didn't. Tao was bitten on his front left leg, just above the paw. He roared in pain and fury, and in that same moment, staff arrived with snake hooks and emergency equipment. The cobra was quickly and safely removed from the area. Bella had not been harmed, not a scratch. But Tao collapsed within minutes, the venom already spreading through his system. His breathing became labored, his eyes began to glaze, the paralysis was setting in. Tao was rushed to the emergency veterinary unit in a specially designed transport crate. The team worked with desperate intensity, administering anti-venom, IV fluids, pain management, and round-the-clock monitoring. King cobra venom attacks the nervous system. It causes respiratory failure. The next 72 hours would be critical. Many animals don't survive such bites, even with treatment. Days passed in agonizing uncertainty. Tao was weak, in pain, and struggling against the venom coursing through his body. His brothers, Simba and Juno, paced restlessly in their enclosure, clearly sensing something was wrong. They called out for him with low, mournful sounds that echoed through the facility. But it was Bella whose vigil moved everyone most deeply. Outside the treatment area, she refused to leave her post. She refused food. She refused to go back to her usual routines. She simply lay at the door, waiting, quiet, patient, unshaken. Staff members took turns sitting with her, offering comfort, but she wouldn't move. She was keeping watch over her son. On the fourth day, something changed. Tao opened his eyes. Though still groggy and weak from the ordeal, he recognized Bella through the observation glass and tried to lift his head. Dr. Chen made the decision to allow a brief reunion under strict supervision. The moment they were reunited was one that no one present will ever forget. Tao, still lying on his side but alert, gently pressed his massive head against Bella's neck. She licked his face repeatedly, her tail wagging for the first time in days. Tears streamed down the faces of every staff member watching through the window. Some tried to hide it, others didn't bother. It was raw, pure, and utterly beautiful. Weeks later, Tao was fully recovered. He bore a small scar on his left shoulder, a permanent reminder of what he had risked. But his spirit was completely intact. He moved with the same grace and power as before, and his devotion to Bella, if possible, had only deepened. The center placed a small wooden sign near their enclosure, hand-carved by one of the rangers. It read, "Love doesn't need the same blood. It only needs a heart that understands." This is a family built not by nature, but by choice. Not by biology, but by need. By loss, by healing, and by something that can only be called love in its purest form. In a world that often feels divided, their story reminds us of a simple but profound truth. Sometimes the deepest bonds come from the deepest losses. Sometimes healing others is how we heal ourselves. And sometimes the family we need most is the one we choose, the one that chooses us back.
regardless of species, size, or origin. That's the end of our story. If you found it touching, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Soul Paw Stories V. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.